This is the brand new Insta360 GO Ultra. I've spent the past several weeks testing this out in a whole bunch of different scenarios, everything from vlogging through to using it at the gym and using it in more extreme scenarios that take full advantage of the tiny size of this camera. Because as always, I wanted to figure out, is this actually any good? Should you buy it? And is it better than the Insta360 GO 3S? And to be honest, for the first couple of weeks of testing, it felt a bit like just another action camera. But then one day I took it out to do something very specific. My perspective on this camera really changed. And just for context, as with all of my tech reviews, this video is not sponsored by Insta360. They did send it to me for review, but all of the thoughts are my own and they don't see a preview of the video. So let's just get straight into it. So I just want to start off by talking a bit about the differences between the GO 3S, which is the predecessor, and the GO Ultra. And then after that, I'm going to jump into some different scenarios where I actually tested out the camera in real life. But at first glance, as you can see, there's quite a difference between the 3S and the Ultra. They've made quite a few changes, which I think is nice. It's nice to see something fresh. And of course, the most striking thing straight away is the different form factor. So now the Ultra is kind of like this square shape with these nice rounded corners compared to the old 3S. The lens cap is slightly larger. You can still obviously remove it and replace it with things like ND filters. And I was actually quite surprised to discover that the GO Ultra is actually heavier than the 3S. So the Ultra is about 53 grams, while the 3S is about 39.5 grams. I think this probably makes sense just because it's got a bigger battery and a larger sensor for the camera. And the other really interesting thing to me about the new Ultra is that it doesn't have internal storage like all the other GO cameras in the past have had. So this one finally has removable storage. I'm personally a big fan of this. You can use just regular micro SD cards. I actually kind of prefer just ejecting the SD card and plugging that straight into my computer rather than using a USB cable and connecting it to the camera itself. Now, when it comes to the actual charging pod, there's again quite a few differences. So the new Ultra pod is quite a bit larger, which is interesting. It's got a significantly larger screen, which I'm personally a big fan of, and also has this kind of grip on one side, which I initially thought was pretty pointless. I thought it was just a bit of an aesthetic choice, but I'll talk a bit more about that later. Still has its signature quick release system on the bottom, but it's also got a little hole where you can connect a wrist strap. And again, I think that's really nice. I think like so many Insta360 products, it's very well thought out. I can definitely see that coming in handy for a lot of people who would take this out and about. Now, when it comes to the actual video performance, I know a lot of people were hoping for 8K with the Ultra, but you are still limited to 4K. Now this goes up to 4K 60, while the 3S is limited to 4K 30. To me, the lack of 8K isn't a deal breaker. I'm not really expecting the ultimate image performance from a camera of this form factor. And I do understand, I think if you were shooting in 8K, it would just kill the battery life too much on something like this. But maybe that's a deal breaker for you. There's a couple of new modes on the Ultra. So the first one is one called Toddler Titan. And I didn't really test it out much because I don't have a toddler. You also ideally need a different lens, but I think this could be pretty fun if you've got little kids. And then the other much more welcome addition is the pure video mode. Now, obviously the majority of Insta360 cameras now have a pure video mode, and this is specifically designed for low light performance. And I went out and compared this directly to the 3S, so I'll talk a bit more about that later. Apart from that, all the other modes are the same, everything you've come to expect from an Insta360 camera. Then finally, I just want to touch on the battery life. So I did a direct comparison test on the GO 3S at 4K 30 FPS. I was able to get about 30 minutes of record time just on the camera itself outside of the pod. And then with the Ultra, I got about 45 minutes. So it's about 50% better battery life just with that direct comparison. Obviously, it's going to change depending on which mode you're using it, in which conditions you're using it. But I thought that was a decent bump. Obviously, it can always be better, but I think it's reasonable, especially considering, again, the tiny form factor of this camera. And don't forget, obviously, when you've got it plugged into the case, you're going to get a lot more runtime than that. Okay, so from here, I took it out into a whole bunch of different scenarios over the course of about a week or so. So the first day I took it out was on a road trip, and I was out from about 9 AM in the morning till about 6 PM at night, and I was using it relatively consistently throughout the day. And I only really had to charge it once. I didn't fully charge it, but I had to top up the battery to get it through the full day. So I thought that was pretty good. That's about what I would expect from most cameras. One of the first things I really appreciated was actually the sticky mount accessory, and it's surprisingly very sticky, and it let me attach the camera to my car windows and to my dash and get a whole bunch of different shots like this. And this is also when I started testing out the chest clip. I was able to get some shots of me driving and while I was at the market buying some food. I also noticed that the stabilization was really good. So this is a shot of me walking quite fast through the market. This is directly attached attached to my chest. So I think this is some pretty good stabilization, all things considered. On the road trip itself, my wife was able to really quickly and easily pick it up and start using it, which I think speaks to just the overall intuitiveness of Insta360 products in general. The Ultra also now has double tap to zoom, and I found this gave really good quality results. It's a lot clearer than just zooming in post. I also did some audio tests just while I was stationary in the car earlier in the morning. Okay, here's what I purchased. It is a Rode NTG, a Rode Go NTG? No, a Rode Video Mic NTG, that's what this is. And I also briefly tested the ND filters here. I didn't really make the most of them on this road trip, but my initial impressions were positive. Obviously these aren't included, you have to buy them separately. And using ND filters does make it less of a pick up and go experience because you do have to monitor your exposure a lot more closely. But overall, for the first day on this road trip, it felt compact, non-invasive, and I found it really fun to shoot with throughout the day. And of course, contrasted with something like my big mirrorless camera rig, it's just night and day. I think for a low-key vlog where you don't want anything too bulky, this is looking like a solid option. In some ways, it already started to feel a bit like a standard action camera, although I think the biggest thing that I noticed was that ability to be able to stick it to windows a lot more easily than I could with a standard action camera that's a bit heavier. Now, the next day, there was an art display in my local area, so me and my wife headed out to that to check it out, and this is where I filmed a direct side-by-side comparison with the Go 3S because I really wanted to see how the pure video mode performs. And overall, as you can see, there's really a pretty drastic difference between the two cameras. The Ultra is giving me much brighter footage, especially in scenarios where there was very little light. You could barely see anything on the 3S sometimes, while it was still very usable on the Ultra. Now, the one thing I did notice about the Ultra footage was that it was losing a lot of detail. For example, people's faces around me were quite hazy. And I think this is probably a result of the noise removal that's going on with the pure video mode. Even on my own face in close-up shots, I noticed a kind of haziness, which again, I think is probably a result of some noise removal processing happening in the background. But to me, I think I'm willing to forgive this, especially when you consider the step up from the Go 3S. The 3S pretty much was unusable in low light scenarios like this, even when you just factor in the amount of noise that you're getting. Whereas with the Ultra, while it's still not perfect, it's very much more usable, and I would be a lot more comfortable taking this out at night in low light situations where I'm not too concerned about getting the ultimate image quality. And as I was filming these selfie shots with the camera in the case, I finally understood the grip on the side. It actually makes it so much easier to hold, to record yourself. And once again, I was really impressed with how Insta360 just thinks about these kinds of small details. Now, I did also just want to point out that throughout the week, I filmed in some other scenarios, particularly indoors with low light, and I did get some mixed results with the Ultra. Now, to be fair, most of these were shot in the standard video mode, not pure video, but in some scenarios where I thought there was enough light, the footage ended up turning out quite grainy, and you can really see quite clearly the shift from when the camera thinks there's not enough light to when it really cleans up the image. So I think if you're filming in mixed light, like sometimes maybe you're indoors in shadow versus outdoors in bright light, you might have some mixed results with the standard video mode. But by far, I found that in bright light outdoors was where I was getting the best image quality. And this took me to the next day where we were out for a bit of a walk at the local park. And honestly, I got some of the cleanest, best looking images here in bright sunlight. I think the colors honestly look excellent on the Ultra. Every iteration of Insta360 cameras, they seem to improve on this, and that's no exception with this camera. And again, I was able to get some fun use out of the magnetic chest mount, which is included with the Ultra as standard. But yeah, I was really impressed. I think if you're planning on using this camera outdoors in bright sunlight, then you're definitely not going to be disappointed with the image quality. Now, there are a couple of other scenarios that I tested out with the Ultra, including going to the gym. So I tried again the magnetic chest mount. I found it a little bit hard to get the right angle at times, probably because I was wearing loose fitting clothes. So in that scenario, you might be better off using something like a hat clip. The fact that the actual camera itself is magnetic also came in quite handy because I was able to stick it to some of the gym equipment and just film myself like that. And then I also tested it throughout the week just while I was working at home, doing some time lapses. I'm a big fan of the new mini 2-in-1 tripod remote kit because it's really easy to set up and use. And again, overall, I was really happy. Can't complain. It's definitely a solid upgrade from 3S. So overall, basically my thoughts up to this point is that it's a decent camera. It's a decent action camera. It can do all of the typical things that a small compact action camera can do, but there are some better options out there in terms of image quality. However, I wanted to shoot a bit of a teaser short for the camera. So I decided to take out my skateboard, which I haven't ridden as much lately, which is a bit sad. And I wanted to get some action shots, especially to really test out the compact form factor. And after just a single skate, I was reminded why these little compact cameras are so powerful. So I waited for a sunny sunny day in Melbourne, which is kind of rare at the moment. And then I rigged up a pretty simple little clamp system to attach to my skateboard, which I thought was quite solid, but ended up in disaster. But more on that in a second. From here, I attached the camera and just went for a skate. And this was really fun, honestly. It was great being able to just hold the action pod and see a preview of the camera while I was skating around to make sure that the shot I was getting looked good. And I think this is what really reminded me of the true value of a camera like this is. Now you might say that you can attach a regular action camera like a GoPro or the Ace Pro to a skateboard. And while that's true, having something that's just as small of a form factor as this, I think just makes it even more approachable and straightforward for the average user. As you can see, these shots are just really fun. Again, I made use of the ND filters for these shots to get the best looking motion blur, and I think they turned out looking amazing. Now, while I was skating, the accessory that I was using actually broke and the camera hit the road really hard and rolled under my skateboard. However, it actually seemed to take it okay. There was a few scratches on the body, and I unfortunately did scratch the ND filter a little bit. But again, the good thing is that the lens cap is replaceable, and I couldn't see anything in the footage, even with the scratch on the lens. So I think that is good. It made me realize though that I think the Ultra isn't quite as sturdy as some of the other types of action cameras. So I think that's worth keeping in mind. You don't want to use this for super high risk activities, but I was able to just swap the broken mount out for one that wasn't broken, got back on the board and just got some more really cool shots. For me, this is where this tiny form factor just really shines. Even just for more standard filming, like for example, I shot these time lapses in my office and I literally stuck the Go Ultra camera to the roof using the sticky pad because it's so light. Like I couldn't do that with a regular action camera because it's actually a decent amount heavier. So this one skate really just reminded me of why I really enjoyed the Insta360 GO line in the past. And that is because you can just get really creative, interesting shots. And it all really just comes down to the compact size and form factor. Because to me, at the end of the day, if you're looking for just something with really high image quality that's going to be compact, then go for something like an Ace Pro 2, because these are going to be amazing image quality for what they are. They're very versatile, and maybe you don't need something like a Go Ultra. But to me, the main difference between a camera like this and the Ultra is just that this is still significantly smaller. And that means you can actually mount it in places that you couldn't normally mount other cameras. And I think for me, that's the main takeaway for this camera. It's really creative. I thought about whether or not it's the most fun camera. I think in some ways it's really fun, but then also 360 cameras are really fun as well. But I think the creativity you can come up with using a camera like this, I haven't personally even scratched the surface. And the fact that it's a fixed lens in some ways adds to the creativity because it really forces you to think about your angle, your placement. Whereas with a 360 camera, you can just sort of shove it anywhere and you'll get some interesting shots. Of course, like I've said, it has its limitations, particularly in low light, even though it's still come a very long way with the pure video mode now an option. And of course, the battery life could always be better. But I think when you consider the size of the camera, there's really not too much to complain about. So who would I recommend it to? I think if you're looking for a general all-in-one camera and you're on a budget, then I think this is a really good option because you get all that ability to do things like vlogging, time lapses, your everyday life, shooting B-roll, that kind of thing on this camera, while also having the ability for creativity. I think if you've already got an action camera, especially something like the Ace Pro 2 that already has really nice image quality and you already get a lot of use out of it, I think the main use case for you would be if you want really specific creative shots that you can't quite get with a larger action camera. But at the end of the day, I still definitely stand behind the Go Ultra. I think it's a really solid addition to the Insta360 lineup, and I just genuinely continue to be impressed by the stuff that Insta360 comes out with. Even their lineup of accessories is just all so well thought out. Just when I think that they can't impress me more, they continue to do it, and that is my honest opinion. But let me know what you think. What would you use this camera for? Are you going to get one? Let me know if you got any comments or questions, and I'll definitely get back to you in the comment section. If you do decide to get one, then feel free to use my affiliate link down in the description. You'll get a free accessory and it helps to support my channel at no extra cost to you. Otherwise, if you'd like to hear more about the Ace Pro 2, then I actually did a comparison with this and the GoPro Hero 13 recently, so you can watch that right here.